welcome to Dr. Sean Says, Treble with Clefs. Today, we're going to talk about how to read pitch and register in Western European-style musical notation.
Hold on a second there, Dr. Sean. Pitch? Register? Those don't sound like musical terms.
Well, it is true that the terms pitch and register have different meanings depending on the context. But when we're talking about music, they specifically refer to the unique sound we hear that allows us to tell different notes apart. Pitch refers to the name we give each individual sound, and register refers to our perception of how high and how low the pitch sounds to our ears.
Okay, that makes sense to me. You mentioned names for each pitch? What kinds of names are we talking about here? Randy? Raven? Roxanne!
Not quite. That's a bit literal. We just used the first 7 letters of the Latin alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G?
That's right. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
So, we use those letters to label pitches, and register is about how high or low a pitch is, but how are we supposed to know what pitch to play and in what register?
Great question. Written music illustrates pitch and register using staff notation.
Staff notation? I'm not so sure. That sounds confusing.
Don't worry. We're going to go through how to make sense of staff notation step by step. First, let's talk about the generic staff. Every staff, or the plural staves, will consist of 5 parallel lines equally spaced apart. These lines and the spaces in between them tell us which pitch to play and what register to play in.
Hold on a second there, Dr. Sean. How can we know both pitch and register from just a bunch of lines on a page? I'm confused.
No, it'll be okay. We just need to add one thing to the staff in order to make sense of all these lines and spaces.
Just one thing? What is it?
Glad you asked. We need to add a clef. Clefs position the staff in a certain register. Higher registers typically use the G or treble clef. Lower registers typically use the F or bass clef. And middle registers often make use of the C clef, either alto or tenor depending on its placement on the staff. Let's start with the treble clef, since it's likely the first one with which most people will come into contact. We call this clef the G clef because this little squiggle thing here will always encircle the pitch G. We can use that to figure out all of the other letter names using the musical alphabet. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. All sorts of handy mnemonic devices exist for learning the lines and spaces of each clef. Here are a few of my favorites for the lines of the treble clef. Every great beverage deserves fame. Enjoy garlic butter? Definitely, fam. Epic garden, better dinner forever. The spaces spell out face, but you can also use mnemonic devices here. Flatulent assets create excruciation. Fantastic approach, creative execution. We can also extend the range of the clef using what we call ledger lines. Ledger lines can extend both the upper and lower range of the staff. Just make sure to count the pitch names in the right direction. F, G, A, etc. in the upper range, and E, D, C, etc. in the lower range.
I'm beginning to understand now. The clefs help musicians know what pitch to play because it gives them a frame of reference.
Exactly. Brilliant!
But how do we know what register to play in? So far, all I can tell is how to name pitches on the treble clef.
Excellent question, and one most effectively answered by referencing a keyboard. Each clef represents a specific range of pitches in order to avoid the overuse of ledger lines. Instruments and voices that perform in higher registers tend to use the treble clef. Before we begin, let's quickly discuss how to apply pitch names to keys on a keyboard.
Whoa! I thought we were going to talk about how to read sheet music. Why do I need to know anything about keyboards?
Well, in order to fully grasp how clefs correspond to specific registers, we need a frame of reference. A keyboard can show us precisely what range each clef represents.
Okay, but how do I know what pitch goes with what key?
Good question. Keyboards follow a pattern, a group of 2 black keys and then a group of 3 black keys with white keys in between. The white key immediately before each group of 2 black keys is always C. From there, we can figure out all of the other white keys by moving through the musical alphabet. D, E, F, G, A, B. Clefs correspond to a specific range, but a useful way to understand how that works is to relate the clefs back to middle C. Middle C is the C that's roughly in the middle of the keyboard, and thus roughly in the middle of the typical range of performable pitches. As stated earlier, the treble clef is known as the G clef because the little squiggle circles the pitch G. We can add now that the G on the treble staff is the G above middle C. Wow! Bass clef deals with lower pitches and is also known as the F clef. We call it the F clef because the 2 little dots always surround the pitch F. This F is the F below middle C. Neat! Just like with the treble clef, we can use mnemonic devices to help remember the order of pitches on the lines of the bass clef. G, B, D, F, A. Garlic, butter, drenched fettuccine alfredo. Giant badgers detained for aggression. And again for the spaces, A, C, E, G. All cows eat grass. Awkward conversation, exit gradually. There are also C clefs. These clefs are pretty specific to certain instruments, like the viola. This specific clef is known as the alto clef. The pitch at the center of the clef is always middle C. If we move the clef up 1 line, it's called the tenor clef, but the pitch at the center of the clef is still middle C.
I get it now. Clefs help us not only know what pitches to play, but they also tell us what register to play in by how those pitches relate to middle C. Higher registers will use the treble clef, and lower registers will use bass clef.
Exactly. The alto and tenor clefs are a bit more specialized, but if you remember that the clef encircles middle C, you'll be good to go. One thing worth noting is that keyboard instruments read what's called a grand staff, or a combination of both treble and bass clef staves in one. In most cases, your left hand will read the bass clef and your right hand will read the treble clef. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on what Dr. Sean says. That's all for now. Take care, folks.